Peter Sam was having a hard time making steam. The Fat Controller came to check on him. "Oh dear," he said. "Peter Sam, you have a train to pull. Looks like I'll have to find another engine to pull it." Just then, Sir Handel came with a returning passenger train. When he rolled back into the shed, the Fat Controller started speaking to him. "Ah, Sir Handel, just in time. I needed to fill in for Peter Sam and pull his goods train." "But sir, I just got back from a train. I had a slate train this morning too. I just wanted a rest." "I'm sorry, Sir Handel. This is very important, and you're the only one available." Sir Handel sighed. "Yes, sir." He banged the cars once he arrived at the depot. A workman came up. "I need you to get some papers," he said to Sir Handel's driver. Then they walked to the warehouse. Sir Handel then spoke to the cars. "Listen," he said. "You better not give me any trouble, or else you'll have a punishment." The trucks didn't like being spoken to that way, so they began to scheme ways to pay Sir Handel out. Then Sir Handel's drivers returned. "I have the paperwork. Let's get going," he said, and soon they were off. The ride was smooth. That is, until they came to a hill. This was the truck's chance for trickery. With the wind helping, they tugged and tugged on the coupling until it snapped, and they came rolling down the hill. They made their way back to the depot, and the sharp bend made them fly off the rails and roll onto the platform, nearly running over a workman. Sir Handel returned to see the mess that he had caused. "Oh dear," he said, "I'm in trouble." Later, Rusty came with the breakdown train and the Fat Controller. "Sir Handel, you have caused confusion and delay. We can't recover these goods in time, so we're losing money." Just then, the angry workman ran up to Sir Handel. "Those trucks almost ran over me!" "Sir Topham Hatt, you have to give this engine a suitable punishment." "Don't worry, I will. Sir Handel, you are to work extra until you can pay off what money we've lost." Later, night fell, and Peter Sam returned to the shed. "I thought you were sick." "Turned out my funnel was just clogged. I had to help Rusty with the cleanup. Just got done with shunting the trucks away." "You know what Grandpuff would say about what you've done today." That would never suit his grace." Yeah. Just because he's gone doesn't mean his words are void. Geez, calm down. You're making it seem like he's dead. He's just in the works. For a long time. Oh, yeah, of course. Point is, let's not disappoint Grandpuff. You're right. Thanks. Good night, Peter Sam. Good night, Sir Handel. Rusty is a little diesel that works on the Skarloey Railway. While most of the engines pull passenger trains from time to time, he never has. Only shunting and goods. One day, after his shift at the quarry, Rusty returned to the sheds where Peter, Sam, and Mighty Max resided. "Curious," said Mighty. "Maybe it's just how long we've been on this railway, but Rusty, I've never seen you pull a passenger train." "Perhaps he got into an accident with coaches and is no longer allowed to pull them," Mike snickered. "No," Rusty reassured. "Nothing like that. Just never got the chance. Never thought about it either." Rusty's face fell. "Never mind, Rusty. I'm sure you'll get your chance someday," said Peter Sam. Rusty felt a little hopeful after that, but days passed and still no chance to pull a passenger train, and the idea never left his mind. Until one day, when Rusty was sitting in a siding taking a drink, his chance came. Skarloey was pulling the passenger train and suddenly broke down next to Rusty. "Oh, Skarloey, how are you going to take these people home?" said Skarloey's driver. "And you can't just pull off what you did before. This is too bad." I can pull it," Rusty said quietly. "What was that?" "I can pull it," said Rusty louder. "Oh, that's wonderful, Rusty. We'll call someone to pick up Skarloey. Just shunt him in the siding you're in." Rusty did as he was told and backed onto the coaches. Peter Sam came down with a line of empty slate cars. "Look at you," he said. "Looks like you got your chance." "Yeah," Rusty said with doubt in his voice. The guard's whistle blew and Rusty was off. "Good luck," Peter Sam called. Rusty, while nervous at first, managed to pull the train well. The coaches chanted, "He's better than Duncan! He's better than Duncan!" which made Rusty chuckle. Soon they reached Crovan's gate. The passengers came out satisfied with their ride. Rusty's driver came out to congratulate him. "Good job, old boy! After this, the Fat Controller is sure to let you do more passenger trains." And he did, and Rusty was more useful than ever. Christmas was coming to Sodor. One day, Rusty and Peter Sam were working at the wharf. "Oh, another year of the magical Christmas season," Peter Sam said. "I am excited to sit in the sheds with all the Christmas lights around," replied Rusty. Just then, Sir Handel came into the wharf with a train. "Hey, Sir Handel," inquired Peter Sam, "are you excited for Christmas?" "I would be if I wasn't working that day." "Wait, you're working on Christmas?" "Yeah, it's a part of that whole work until the money's paid off thing." "But it's Christmas. Can't you get off for that?" "It's not that big of a deal. There's always next year." The topic was dropped, but Peter Sam didn't want his friend to work during Christmas. Later, he talked to the Fat Controller about it. However, it turned out to be fruitless. "I'm sorry, Peter Sam. I would hate for Sir Handel to be left out, but Christmas is the busiest time of year," he said. "Plus, it is a part of his punishment." Peter Sam was saddened by the news and soon got back to his work, thinking there was no way he could change the Fat Controller's mind. On Christmas Eve, Peter Sam was tasked to take the last passenger train of the day. But the cold was biting, and Peter Sam's fire was dimming out. Soon, Peter Sam couldn't move. His fireman did as much as he could to rekindle the flame, but to no avail. "Oh dear," Peter Sam said. "We're stuck out here, and there's no way for us to go to the next station because all the engines are in the sheds." Peter Sam was soon cut off by a whistle. It was Sir Handel. He was coming from the quarry with a slate train. "Sir Handel, am I glad to see you," Peter Sam said. Can you help me out here, bud?" Sure," Sir Handel said. "To what station?" "Crovan's Gate." "Then off we go." Handel pushed the train across the railway. With steep hills in his way, he persevered. He eventually made it to Coven's Gate, where Sir Topham Hatt and the other engines were waiting. Well, what happened here? Sir Topham Hatt inquired. My fire went out and Sir Handel happened to be behind me with a slate train. He was able to shunt his and my train all the way here, Peter Sam said, all in one breath. I don't think that was all grammatically correct, Sir Handel said to himself. Well, good job, Sir Handel. That was very useful. Maybe enough to grant him leisure on Christmas? He stared. Sure, why not? The engines were happy, especially Sir Handel. Whistles and horns were blown. The next night, it was Christmas, and all the engines were in the sheds, enjoying the festivities. Thanks, Peter Sam, Sir Handel said. Thank you for giving me a relaxing Christmas. No one should have to work on Christmas, Peter Sam replied, and the two engines enjoyed the rest of the magical night. It had been raining a lot on Sodor. The engines had to be a lot more careful because the rain was making the ground beneath the rails muddy and soft. Duncan had returned from the Talon Railway, and the first engine he saw was Rusty. Rusty brought him back to the sheds, telling him about the happenings since he'd been gone. Duncan, welcome back, said the Fat Controller. I'm sure you're tired, so you can take a rest. Thank you, sir, Duncan said, and he rested in the sheds for the rest of the night. The next day, Duncan was tasked to take a train from the wharf. When Duncan arrived at the wharf, Sir Handel was assembling his train. Well, if it isn't that engine who lost his train. It's great to see you too, Sir Handel said. Shut it and take your train. Touchy, are we? Duncan said. Fine then, but you might want to finish assembling it first. You're arrogant, Sir Handel said. Later, the train was finished and Duncan took it away. However, Duncan's excitement got the best of him. The rails began to sink into the mud, and Duncan's weight wasn't helping. Duncan was going too fast, and the rails completely sunk and took Duncan with him. Duncan rolled down the hill and became covered in mud. His driver quickly ran to the nearest station. There he called for help. The downpour was too heavy for anyone to come then, so they had to wait until the next morning. The next day, Sir Handel came with the crane. Well then, look who fell off the rails, he said. Then he pulled Duncan back on the rails and shunted him out of the way. Sir Handel? Yes? I'm sorry for being arrogant yesterday at the wharf. It's fine. I assume you've learned your lesson. Indeed I have. Duncan doesn't disrespect Sir Handel anymore. He learned that he too can have his downfalls. Mighty Mac are double Fairley engines conjoined by the cab. As many brothers do, they fought a lot. And the fact that they were always together doesn't help either.
What the heck, Mighty? What? You made slate dust cover me. Oh. Whoops. Whoops! I have dust in my eye because of you. Get over it, Mac. Get over it? I'll give you something to get over.
The engines bickered the whole way, but their bickering distracted them from the rails. They forgot to slow down by the bend, and they derailed.
You know, I blame you. Ugh.
Soon, the engines were put back on the rails. However, for the rest of the day, they didn't say a word to each other. Then it carried on to the next day, then the next. The other engines were getting a little concerned. One day, Skarloey decided to talk to the two. Mighty, Mac,
Yes, Skarloey?
you two haven't said a word to each other for a couple of days.
I have nothing to say to that parasite. Me neither. Hey, what?
You two have a privilege that no one else has. You practically have a lookout engine on your back.
He hasn't done anything for me but complain. I'd rather have an ongoing boiler ache than have this thing behind me.
Max stayed silent. He was hurt, but he didn't want anyone to see.
If you'll excuse me, I have a train to pull.
Mighty Mac made their way to the quarry. Max still a little hurt. Oh no, this won't be good. The train was running quickly down the hill toward Mighty Mac. Mac noticed.
Mighty!
Mighty ignored him.
Mighty!
Mighty still ignored him. Mac whistled loudly a couple times. Still nothing, until it was too late. Mac's buffer beam was bent and his funnel was cracked.
Mac, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mac, for not listening to you. You think? I'm sorry, too, for distracting you and making us fall off the rails the other day. It's fine.
The Fat Controller came to see the accident. He was not happy. Well, it would seem this is very serious. You'll have to go to the works to get that repaired, which means you'll have to go with him, Mighty.
That's fine by me, sir.
An engine came to take the two to the works. They enjoyed their time together, and they grew even closer. Sir Handel was complaining to the other engines about the coaches. I swear, they are nothing more than a nuisance. I'm sure they feel the same way about you. What was that? Sir Handel, have you ever thought about being kind to the coaches? Then they might return the favor. Last time I tried being nice to them, those cattle cars derailed me. That's another thing. Maybe don't call them names. Whatever. I'm turning in. Sir Handel sulked into the shed and went to sleep. The others followed suit. Next day, Sir Handel was taking the coaches out on a train. Today was particularly worse than previous days. The coaches were very irritable. The coach's mood affected how smooth the ride was. When they reached the next station, the passengers got out cross. One passenger in particular was very cross at Sir Handel.
I swear, if this engine was a diesel, that ride would have been much smoother.
Sir Handel took this very personally.
Excuse me, sir, but I'm just as good as a diesel, if not better.
That'd be the day. Sir Handel crossly finished his run and came back to the sheds where he complained to the other engines.
To think, he said a diesel could have done better. No offense, Rusty.
None taken. The other engines said nothing in response to Sir Handel's complaining. Soon, they all went to sleep. Next morning, Sir Handel woke up real early. He went to the coach's shed. He sighed. Listen, I'm going to have to take you out today, and I hope you'll behave.
Why should we listen to you?
Well, for one, if you don't perform well, you could get scrapped and replaced. And I'm sorry for calling you categories all these years. I know our relationship has been tainted by that. Start anew? The coaches was silent for a moment. Fine. Sir Handel brought them to the platform where the train began. The same passenger from yesterday was there. I doubt this will be much different from yesterday, he said crossly. But Sir Handel was determined, and with the help of the coaches, the ride would be a lot smoother. And it was. Down the line was nothing but a few slight teetering back and forth. When they made it to a station, the same passenger tried to leave the site, but Sir Handel caught him. The man turned in shock. I think you have something to say. The passenger stared, then finally spoke. I'm sorry. I guess you are just as good as a diesel. Then he scurried away to his bus. Sir Handel and the coaches laughed. After that experience, Sir Handel and the coaches got along better, though still a long ways to go.
Thrills and spills on the railway, it's a life of happiness, but sometimes impatience can lead to carelessness. Some think they are smart cats and some just know it all, but sooner or later we all find out that accidents happen now and again, just when you least expect, just when you think that life is okay, fate comes to collect. Accidents happen now and again, when people or trains get smart. If you don't concentrate on the thing that you're doing, accidents will happen just like that. Your best laid plans can turn upside down if you get too confident. Sometimes you will slip and slide if that's lady luck's intent. 1 minute you're running ahead, the next you're on the ground. But please remember, whatever the weather, you must take care, 'cause accidents happen now and again. Sometimes just by chance, you gotta pick yourself up and dust yourself down, put it down to experience. Accidents happen signs are there for us to see most of the time, but sometimes we take chances, ignore the danger signs. Fate can surprise you with no reason or rhyme. Make sure you learn your lesson, you'll know better next time. Accidents happen now and again, just when you least expect, just when you think that life is okay, fate comes to collect. Accidents happen now and again, when people or trains get smart. If you don't concentrate on the thing that you're doing, accidents will happen just like that. Accidents happen now and again, sometimes just by chance. You gotta pick yourself up and dust yourself down, put it down to experience. Accidents happen now and again, just don't take it all too hard. If you don't concentrate on the thing that you're doing, whatever you're doing is not what you're thinking. Accidents, incidents, accidents happen just like that.
The Fat Controller started work on a new railway to get ballast from the mountains that the Minnesota engines used to mine out. This in turn made him a bit neglectful of the other engines on both the Skarloey Railway and the Northwestern Railway. So he tried to find someone to take care of both lines. He easily found someone for the big engines, but he had a harder time for the little engines. So he met the engines with a message. I know you've all noticed that I've been absent because of the construction of the new railway, so I decided to enlist one of you engines to make sure everything runs like clockwork. Temporarily, of course. The engines got excited. That engine will be Skarloey, seeing as he's the engine with the most experience on this line. Thank you, sir. Skarloey took his job very seriously. He caught Sir Handel sleeping on a siding. He blew his whistle loudly. Ah! Wake up! If your wheels aren't whirring, you're not being a really useful engine. Yeah. Then he saw Peter Sam come by Cross Nykern. When he made it to the river, something on the line derailed his trucks and made them fall into the river. Oh dear, Peter Sam. Now the trains will be backed up. Peter Sam stayed shamefully silent. Later at the sheds, Nancy came by to give Skarloey a polish.
I'm here for your polish, Skarloey.
Sorry, Nancy. I don't need a polish. I'm too busy. I'll take a polish, Nancy.
Sure, Duncan.
Sorry, Duncan. You have a passenger train to pull. Duncan puffed away, muttering to himself.
Oh, passengers and no polish.
The next day, at the wharf, Sir Handel, Duncan, and Peter Sam were talking about Skarloey. The powers got into his head. It's not the same Skarloey. We need to knock him down a peg. What do you have in mind? This might not be the best idea. Shut it, Peter Sam! Then Duncan told the two his plan. Later, Skarloey was in the middle of a train. He stopped at a station to let goods off. Peter Sam came up beside him. Hello, Skarloey. Hi, Peter Sam. Shouldn't you be taking a passenger train to Lakeside? I came here to tell you Duncan got into an accident with Sir Handel, but by Cross Nykern. I thought since you were in charge, you'd want to check it out. Okay. Can you take over my train? Yeah, of course. Skarloey made his way to Cross Nykern. Meanwhile, Sir Handel and Duncan had a line of trucks. They saw Skarloey come around the bend. Are you ready? Yeah, let's do this. They started and kept accelerating. Then they applied their brakes and let the trucks roll. That's weird.
Call me.
There's no accident. Is it further down the line? Just then, the trucks came into view. What the heck? Oh crap. Take cover! The trucks crashed into Skarloey. The wind from the blast picked up the Fat Controller's hat. It flew into the air and landed on Skarloey's funnel. So Topham Hatt soon found out who was behind it all. When he found the three, he gave them a mouthful. Some explicit words. Later, Skarloey spoke to them. What you three did was not right. We know. But I can't say I didn't deserve it. The engines were confused. I was out of my league. I should have never blamed you for having an accident or not let you get a polish. But I'm not sorry for waking you. Fair enough. And we're sorry for causing that accident. It's no problem. Then, the three engines drifted to sleep.
Summer had come to the island, and with it, more tourists, more business, and the baking sun. The engines had to take long breaks for drinks of water. At the day's end, all the engines would be worn out. I get no rest. Oh, hush, Duncan. We all feel like our boilers are fit to burst. I feel like my petrol tank is going to blow as well. We should all get rest tonight, because tomorrow we'll have to do it all again. With that, Skarloey went to sleep. Duncan, Sir Handel, and Rusty followed. Peter Sam thought to himself, everyone else is straining with summer heat. Next morning, the engines were getting ready for the day's work, and Duncan began complaining again. Ugh, I have the first train. Why can't any of you have it? I can take it. The other engines were shocked, but Duncan didn't turn down his offer. Okay then. Peter Sam took Duncan's train. It didn't take long for the summer heat to make an impact, however. When the train run was finished, they had to take a long drink. While Peter Sam was having his drink, Skarloey pulled up with another train. He looked worn out as well. Hey, Peter Sam. Skarloey, are you okay? Oh no. A drink and I'll be alright. Peter Sam stopped filling up on water. No. The return train will be in about 5 minutes. That's more than enough time for me to rest. I'm taking a return train anyway. You just rest up here and return to the sheds when you're ready. Skarloey reluctantly agreed. His coaches were shunted to the back of Peter Sam, and Peter Sam was off. The heat continued to beam down on him, but Peter Sam pressed on. He made it to the last station and backed into the shed. Sir Handel noticed how strange he was. You need to stop taking all these cover trains. I'm fine. Just then, a workman walked up to the sheds. We have a coal delivery that needs to be taken to the wharf. I'll take it. What? No. I haven't taken a train all day. Let me take it. That's a first. Peter Sam, I'm serious. You need to rest here. I'll be fine. And Peter Sam pulled out of the sheds. On the way to the wharf, the heat had once again begun to make an impact. Peter Sam ignored it. However, with a lack of rest, the heat hit hard on Peter Sam. More and more steam started coming out. Eventually, the boiler cracked. The driver immediately stopped Peter Sam. We can't go any further, or you'll blow up, Peter Sam. Peter Sam sat there in silence. His driver found a telephone to call for help. Soon enough, Sir Handel came to the rescue. Well, he said. What did I tell you? Sir Handel brought the train to the wharf and took Peter Sam home. Peter Sam promised himself to never take the covered train unless it was really important.
Duncan has his grievances. The grievances about being overworked. Or not having enough work. But he has a grievance for the bigger engines too. Particularly James. It always bothered Duncan how vain and self-important James was. One day, James came by the sheds bragging about his shiny paintwork. Being a little engine must be terrible. Working with all that slate, all that dust getting on you. At least I do hard work. With your shiny paintwork, you probably get out of the sheds once a day. Pathetic. James scoffed and puffed away. Throughout the day, Duncan was thinking of ways to pay James out. It would be difficult because they were on different rails. Duncan continued to ponder. Duncan? You're sitting on the points. Oh, my bad. What's on your mind, Duncan? It's James. He's nothing more than a pompous brat. I was thinking of ways to pay him out. Duncan, I don't condone paying another engine out. It's childish and it does more harm than good. Duncan largely ignored Skarloey. Yes, Skarloey. Well, thanks for helping me shunt my train. Now, there are some shunting duties to do back at Croven's Gate. Alright. Duncan made his way back to Croven's Gate while Skarloey took his train. While shunting, Duncan was still thinking of ways to pay James out. Duncan stopped paying attention to his task. He biffed a couple cars off the line onto the standard gauge rails. Oh no. It's okay. We can clean this up. At this time of day, there aren't too many trains out around here. Duncan went to pick up the crane. Then he heard a whistle. It's James! James was rushing down the line. Dirty coal trucks! Dirty coal trucks! I want this to be over with. Duncan blew his whistle as hard as he could. James, stop! What? It was too late. James crashed into the cars, destroying them and knocking himself off the line. James groaned. Duncan decided to remain silent. Later, the Fat Controller punished Duncan in the sheds for a week. I told you it'd be more trouble than it was worth. Duncan remained silent. Then James spoke up. Hey, Duncan, listen. Duncan perked up. I kinda deserve that. I shouldn't downgrade your worth because of your work. I got my payback. I didn't purposely cause that accident, you know. You didn't? Huh. Guess karma does exist. James puffed away. Duncan sat in the shed. He felt content that he had taught James a lesson. But was it really worth it?
And so, she cries into the darkness. Help! 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 But no one will ever find her, and no one will ever save her. I don't like that story very much. What's wrong, Peter Sam? Why does it have to have such an eerie ending? Because it wouldn't be a scary story if it didn't. Peter Sam is just a scaredy engine. That's not true. Bet you couldn't tell a scary story if your life depended on it. Peter Sam remembered a story his driver told him earlier that week. I have one. Go on. On the Minnesota Railway, before it closed, there was an engine named Scott. I don't remember an engine named Scott. This was before you and I came to the railway, when Grandpa was there alone. Anyway, Scott was an ambitious engine. He loved to do work efficiently and effectively. One day, the trucks were being mischievous. They pushed too far and too hard, and Scott crashed in a horrific accident. Some say they see his smoke box floating about, looking for its chance to take over another engine's body. Silence fell over the shed. That's all. Told you he couldn't tell a scary story. Peter Sam was disappointed, but not surprised. Soon the workmen came to the sheds. Late night delivery of slate. We'll take Sir Handel and Peter Sam. The two went off to the slate quarry. A light fog settled in. Peter Sam was told to go ahead while they assembled Sir Handel's train. He made his way to the wharf, and Colin, the wharf crane, noticed a disappointed look on Peter Sam's face. What's the matter? Nothing. Just that Sir Handel's bugging me. I couldn't tell a scary story that scared him. Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind it. Let's get to work so that we can both sleep. Peter Sam and Colin worked hard into the night. Colin had a scrapped smoke box on his hook. Then, suddenly, the smoke box slipped off and fell in front of Peter Sam's face. My bad, Peter Sam. I'll get that off of you as soon as possible. An idea flew into Peter Sam's funnel. No, leave it on. This is my opportunity to get back at Sir Handel. And he told Colin the plan. Sir Handel entered the wharf with his last slate train. There was a sudden noise. Sir Handel stopped. Colin? Did Peter Sam go back to the sheds? Colin was visibly trembling. Sir Handel, get out of here. What are you talking about? Peter Sam, the smoke box phantom got to him. That again? Sir Handel felt uneasy, but tried to sound brave. Suddenly, a line of slate wagons rolled out onto the bridge, and the fog seemed to have thickened. Sir Handel stared deeply into the darkness, staring. Sir Handel jumped. Then, out of the darkness came a faceless engine with Peter Sam's body. Run, Sir Handel. Save yourself. You're next! Sir Handel backed up quickly, getting out of the wharf as fast as he could. Peter Sam and Colin laughed. Colin lifted the smoke box off Peter Sam, and Peter Sam returned home. Thank you, Colin. Peter Sam arrived at the sheds. Everyone was asleep, and he could see Sir Handel deep in the sheds. Peter Sam chuckled to himself. Who doesn't know how to tell a scary story now?
Stop! Stop! Never! Never! Ah! Sir Handel complained about the trucks. He wasn't badly damaged, but his boiler was dented, and his left side was covered in dirt. You remind me of myself when I was younger. Oh, are you gonna tell us another story about the good old days? Sir Handel said, annoyed. Why, yes I am. This one takes place not long after Rheneas got his cab. I was mostly assigned to passenger service, and Rheneas handled goods. Now, I've mentioned that I used to be stuck up and held myself to a higher standard. Well, at this point, I calmed down a bit, but I was still a bit selfish. One day, the manager talked to us about the arrangements for the week. Alright, we decided to switch things up a bit to keep things from being dry. So this week, Rheneas will be doing primarily passengers, and Skarloey will be doing primarily goods. I was not happy about those arrangements. Sir, I beg your pardon. I can't handle trucks all week. Skarloey, I want to make sure you know you're not above anyone. You'll do just as much as Rheneas does. Plus, I'm sure Rheneas would love to pull passengers more often, right? Oh, yes, sir. The next morning, Rheneas and I were getting ready to do our respective jobs. These trucks are gonna be the death of me. Don't be so dramatic. It's pulling a train. What we were built to do. I was built for passenger. Whatever. Just be patient with him. He'll work wonders. Yeah, sure. I went to the slate quarry and made a terrible impression. Listen, I'm the one in control. You do as I say. Who's this guy? Skarloey. He pulls like 3 of us a week. Oh yeah, I've seen you around. Yeah, cut the chatting. I want this week to be over with. Started organizing the trucks. Roughly. Then the workmen came up. They wanted a line of empty trucks to be sent to Croven's Gate. So I lined them up and gave them a pep talk. Listen, I want no trouble from you lot, you hear? Yeah. And I took them out of the quarry, but the trucks weren't going to let me get away with being so rude to them. The moment they got the chance, they started to jolt, shove, and made me lose control. I was soon sent rolling down the line, the trucks laughing in front of me. Stop this! Stop this now! They sent me on the soon-to-be wharf line. I crashed through the buffers and into the dirt mound behind me. I was not happy. Rheneas came to clean the mess. He lectured me, of course. How did I know this was gonna happen? I'll take the trucks away, and then come back for you later. So he did just that, and when he came back for me, I was silent. That experience has taught me how to properly treat trucks. Maybe you should take a lesson from this, Sir Handel. Might explain all my shortcomings with trucks I've had. This leaves me to wonder. Rheneas had finally returned from the works. He was excited to see his friends and his brother again. The Fat Controller came to greet Rheneas, and he brought a peculiar man with him.
Rheneas, it is great to have you back on the Skarloey Railway rails.
Thank you, sir. It's great to be back. Sir, who's this man?
Oh, right. I've started work on a railway on the west of the island that runs from Aldsborough to Ardsdale. So my attention has been split between the Northwestern, this railway, and the project. So I found someone to run this railway for me. This is Mr. Percival. He'll be in charge from now on. Good day, 2 engines.
Sir Topham Hatt left, and Mr. Percival spoke up. I'm happy to start working with you. First job, some children need a train to the church in Lakeside. Rheneas, I'm sure you'd like to stretch your wheels. Would you like to take this train? Oh, yes, sir. I'd love to. Rheneas left the sheds. Good luck, Skarloey called out. Rheneas puffed about the line slowly. There was no rush, and it was nice to see the scenes of his home. Fields with children playing. Water glistening in the sun. Rheneas was happy to be home. That's strange, said the driver. Does it look like something is broken or out of place? The fireman looked around. Before he could answer, the driver realized a hill was coming. Rheneas, we're gonna have to speed up to get over this hill. So Rheneas did. He sped over the hill with high speed. Rheneas was about to apply his brakes to slow him down when Rheneas began gaining more and more speed. He tried again and again to apply his brakes. Nothing happened. In the coaches, however, the children were having a blast. The chaperone felt sick. Rheneas continued to thunder down the line, passing Duncan. Whoa! Slow down! I can't! Up ahead were the switches that led to the wharf or lakeside. The points were set towards the wharf. Rheneas passed a sign that said slow, but Rheneas wasn't slowing down anytime soon. At the wharf, Sir Handel and Peter Sam saw Rheneas thunder in. Rheneas quickly spoke out. Sir Handel, apply your brakes now! Sir Handel did so immediately. Rheneas buffered up to him and began to slow down. Sir Handel went through the buffers, but Rheneas was stopped, and the children were safe. Phew. Rheneas was red in the face. He thought he'd let the children down. Just then, the chaperone barged out of the coach door and went to the river. The engines cringed. Soon after, the children came out laughing. Rheneas was a tad puzzled. Then, one of the children came up to him. "Thank you, Mr. Rheneas. That was really fun." Rheneas blushed. He was happy the children had fun. Peter Sam took the children and made his way to Lakeside. The handle was put back on the rails. Rusty took Rheneas back to the sheds. Rheneas had a sad expression. He was happy the children had a good time, but he was afraid his broken brakes would mean that he'd have to go back to the works. Sir Handel came to the sheds a little later with Mr. Percival. "Rheneas, I'm sorry about your brakes." "Do I have to go back to the works, sir?" "Actually, no. Brake repairs can be done right here in the sheds. You don't have to leave home." Rheneas was ecstatic. May not be able to go along the line, but at least I'll be accompanied by my friends. Everyone had to agree.